Hello, everyone. We hope you are having a wonderful, safe, and happy holiday season. Today's episode is just going to be a short check-in with the cases you've been following closely to give you time to get back to unwrapping gifts and spending time with the ones you love. So let's jump right in. First, Blake Lively has accused her It Ends With Us director and co-star Justin Baldoni of sexual harassment on the set of the movie and a subsequent effort to destroy her reputation in a newly filed legal complaint. In the complaint obtained by the AP, Lively accuses Baldoni and the studio of embarking on a multi-tiered plan to damage her reputation following a meeting in which she and her husband, Ryan Reynolds, addressed, quote, repeated sexual harassment and other disturbing behavior by Baldoni and a producer on the movie. That plan, they allege, included a proposal to plant theories online, message boards, engineer a social media campaign, and place news stories critical of Lively. Allegedly, Baldoni enlisted publicists and crisis managers in a, quote, sophisticated, coordinated, and well-financed retaliation plan meant to bury and destroy Lively if she went public with her on-set concerns. The complaint goes on to list 30 demands that Lively said Baldoni and others agreed to after their tense sit-down over her hostile work environment concerns. Among them, quote, no more showing of nude videos or images of women to Lively and others on set, and no more discussions about pornography, sexual experiences, or genitalia. She also said Baldoni should not ask her trainer about her weight without her consent, should not press her about her religious beliefs, and should make no further mention of her dead father. An intimacy coordinator was also required to be on set whenever Lively shared a scene with Baldoni, and he was barred from entering her trailer or the makeup trailer where she was undressed. The demands also stipulated that there would be, quote, no more improvising of kissing scenes or adding of sex scenes to the film outside of the ones in the script Lively approved when she signed on. Brian Friedman, an attorney representing Baldoni, Wayfair Studios, and its representatives, called the claims completely false, outrageous, and intentionally salacious. All right, what is happening here? Well, if all of this is true, then this is really ugly stuff. And it kind of amazes me. It's surprisingly brazen, if true, that this kind of stuff would still be happening in a post-Me Too world that we all live in. Also, Lively is no rising starlet who might be an easy target. She is a well-established actress. She's married to a huge celebrity as well. I don't know if, again, all of this is true, what could possibly have been going through Baldoni's mind thinking that he could get away with this stuff. And I know there is a camp who does not believe the allegations of inappropriate behavior on Baldoni's part. And I'm not even really going to weigh in on any of that. I'll allow all of that to be hashed out in the courts. But at the end of the day, if this does have a lasting effect on Baldoni's career, it would be because of the actions that he and his team took afterwards. As always, it's the cover-up that is far worse than the crime itself. My question is this. If true, and it sounds like they have the receipts to prove it, if this smear campaign is true, it's not only awful that they did it, but how they obviously thought they were going to get away with it. If you read some of the text exchange between these people involved, allegedly, it's, like I said, pretty brazen. It was people operating with the impression that no one was ever going to find out what they were up to. And it makes me start to ask, how often does this stuff go on? How easily are we all completely manipulated by these kinds of covert smear operations and campaigns, if that's what you want to call it? Now, is this illegal? Well, that's something that's going to be hashed out in this civil lawsuit, and perhaps on a civil level with defamation, libel, perhaps. But will this actually create a change in the industry is really a question that time will tell. But what do you guys think? Do you think, are you on team Blake or Team Baldoni? Do you think this is just a bunch of celebrities bickering amongst each other, or is this really serious stuff that we should all be mindful of, that we are perhaps being manipulated in this type of way? Please let us know in the comments. Moving on, the man accused of fatally shooting the CEO of United Healthcare pleaded not guilty on Monday to state murder and terror charges, while his attorney complained that comments coming from New York's mayor would make it tough to receive a fair trial. According to the AP, Luigi Mangione was shackled and seated in a Manhattan court when he leaned over to a microphone to enter his plea of not guilty to charges of multiple counts of murder, including murder as an act of terrorism. Mangione's initial appearance in New York State trial court was preempted by federal prosecutors bringing their own charges over the shooting. The federal charges could carry the possibility of the death penalty, while the maximum sentence for the state charges is life in prison without parole. Attorney Karen Friedman Agnifilo told the judge that the warring jurisdictions had turned Mangione into a, quote, human ping pong ball, and that New York City Mayor Eric Adams and other government officials had made him a political pawn, robbing him of his rights as a defendant and tainting the jury pool. Quote, he was on display for everyone to see in the biggest stage perp walk I've ever seen in my career. It was absolutely unnecessary. Mangione is due back in court on February 21st. All right, what's happening here? I'll say this, she's not wrong. That perp walk was a spectacle. While this Hollywood production of a perp walk may have had little effect on the trial or his rights moving forward, it does indicate a larger problem with how this case is being handled from the onset. Here's some questions for you. Why are the feds charging him on top of the state already? It's a high-profile case. I realize that. It's an assassination. I realize that. And yes, he did move across state lines. I understand how they have jurisdiction. But why? End of the day, this is a murder case. And I'm not trying to diminish it in its seriousness or impact on us culturally. But end of the day, this is a murder case. This is the type of case that the district attorney's office in Manhattan handles day by day, every single day of the year. It's sad but true, but people are gunned down like this all across the country. And I'm not saying that this case is not unique. I think it is terrorism. But my point is, why is it already getting so much special treatment? Why are the feds involved when they normally, the vast majority of cases, would not involve themselves in? Why did he have this perp walk where it was basically a moment for the media more than anything else? They easily could have taken this man in the back door of that courtroom and we never would have seen him. They wanted that moment. Why? Is this all about the feds providing some sort of fail-safe if something goes wrong in the state courts? Do the feds really want the death penalty in this case? I don't know. But I do know that when you start to treat cases like this that are so important and do have such a high profile so differently from the beginning, you start to invite mistakes. And that is what concerns me. But what do you guys think? Do you think that this is exactly how this case should be handled? That both a state and federal prosecutor should involve themselves in this whole thing? Or is it already being handled far too differently and far too special from this early on? Please let us know in the comments. Finally, moving on, the effort to prosecute Alec Baldwin for the fatal shooting of a cinematographer in 2021 ended on Monday, according to the New York Times, when the special prosecutor withdrew her appeal of the judge's decision to dismiss the involuntary manslaughter charge during the actor's trial. The prosecutor, Carrie T. Morrissey, said in a news release that she was abandoning the case because the New Mexico Attorney General's office, which handles appeals of criminal cases, did not intend to, quote, exhaustively pursue the appeal. She goes on to say, the state's efforts to continue to litigate the case in a fair and comprehensive manner have been met with multiple barriers that have compromised its ability to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. Lawyers for Baldwin have long criticized Morrissey's handling of the case and sought its dismissal before the trial, accusing her of bad faith motives for reviving the prosecution against him. Morrissey has said that the prosecution was based on Baldwin's violation of safety protocols on set, including pointing the gun towards cinematographer Helena Hutchins and failing to verify that the gun did not contain live ammunition. Baldwin, who still faces lawsuits that were brought against him after the tragedy, has not yet spoken publicly in detail about the prosecution. What is happening here? The way this has all ended, this case, how it was handled by the judge, and I'll make that point very clear, restores my faith in the system. Because try as she might to pursue what I and many believe to be an ill-conceived and bad-intentioned personal campaign against Baldwin to begin with, end of the day, our system has certain checks and balances, not the least of which being an adversarial system where no matter what the prosecutor says or does, it's going to end up in a court of law where all sides must play by the same rules. I had major problems with this prosecution from the beginning. I thought it was a very suspect theory of liability. I thought the prosecutor's office seemed inordinately concerned with media perception. I don't think he ever should have been prosecuted criminally. And we had this rogue prosecutor who could only go so far before the system did its job. And I think that's exactly what happened here. Now, someone has been found criminally responsible for this. Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, yes, I agree with that. She is ultimately the person who I think was responsible for the conditions that led to that tragic death on set. And Baldwin, I think, is civilly liable. I think they should absolutely pursue that. This is where that should ultimately land, and that is a good thing. Justice doesn't always require jail time out of a defendant. So I think they should pursue their case. They should have their moment in court. But I think the way that this has ended, we're finally an end to what I think is a myopic and narrow-minded pursuit of this actor, probably simply because he's an actor, has finally come to an end. But what do you guys think? Do you think that Baldwin escaped true justice here, or do you think everything ended up exactly the way it should have? Please let us know in the comments. Before we dive into the other cases making headlines this week, I'm going to ask you guys one very small favor, and that is if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel now. If you have, then go bug a friend. We are blown away by the response that we have received, and we look forward to continue to provide you with even more content every week, and the best way that we can do that is through your support. And don't forget to check out Courtroom Confidential, the podcast. Please join our community on all major podcast platforms. Also making headlines, prominent real estate broker Orrin Alexander and his twin brother Alon will remain in custody following their initial court appearance in Miami on Friday. The brothers had sought bond on charges of sex trafficking and gang rape, but federal prosecutors argued that they were a flight risk and a danger to the community. Judge Ellen D'Angelo set a December 30th detention hearing date. A new sentencing date has been set for two defendants in the Pike County Massacre. Billy Wagner's wife, Angela Wagner, and her mother, Rita Newcomb, both took plea deals in the case. Police say Angela helped plan the killings of 8 members of the Roden family. As part of her plea deal, she is required to testify against her husband at trial. Wagner and Newcomb are set to be sentenced on January 3rd of 2025. Billy Wagner's murder trial is set to begin early next year. Last week, a judge refused to allow a Michigan school shooter to withdraw his guilty plea to 24 charges, including terrorism and first-degree murder. Ethan Crumbley's appellate lawyer cited his mental health and other factors when he waived his right to trial at age 16 and pleaded guilty to killing 4 students at Oxford High School in 2021. But Oakland County Judge Kwame Rowe said Crumbley's guilty plea was, quote, knowingly, voluntarily, and accurately given. Finally, we have some announcements. If you haven't watched it already, last Monday we did a new episode in our Courtroom Confidential conversation series, and we sat down with Ian Runkle of the Bailey. He's a very interesting fellow. If you haven't checked it out, please check it out now. And next Monday, Lauren and Dr. John Mathias of Hidden True Crime will be our next guests on Courtroom Confidential Conversations, so please check that out. We are doing a live premiere at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. We would love to see you in the chat. Who do you guys want to hear from next? And finally, we are very excited to say that we have finally launched our merch, so please check it out. I'm wearing one of our shirts right now. We're very proud of this stuff that we put together for you guys. It is at thecourtroomconfidential.com, or we will give you a link in the description below. That is it for us this week, folks. I am your host, Josh Ritter. You can find me on all social media at Joshua Ritter ESQ or at joshuaritter.com. Thank you again for joining me. I hope that you had a happy and healthy holiday with the ones that you love, and I look forward to seeing you again next week for another episode of Courtroom Confidential.